Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to call to order the October 11th, 2017 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Director Miller.
Here.
Ms. Alvarez-Alice.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Youngblood.
Here.
Mr. Silver will not be here today. Chairman Irvine.
Here.
Should have my coffee. We have 5 members of the committee present, so we have a quorum.
Okay. Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of September 13th, 2017. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Alice.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
That motion is passed with 5 yes votes.
Okay. Our next order of business is the review of the finance report. Jeremy?
Good morning, Jeremy Fine, your CFO.
Good morning.
Morning.
And to walk through the August financial report, as you see here on the first page with regard to revenues, we had a good month with regard to Farebox. The primary reason behind that is that Lollapalooza happened in the month of August this year as opposed to July of last year, so we saw a little bit of a timing differential there. But this was a positive number for Farebox revenues of $500,000. Passes were down slightly, about a little over $1 million, but overall fare and pass totals were down just slightly under $1 million, which is one of the best numbers we've seen in a while. Reduced fare subsidy was down by half, as we've seen over the last several years, and non-fare box revenues continue to outperform, primarily based on additional advertising and other revenues that we get in that line. The total revenues for the month were down about $400,000 for the month of August. So we see how that parlays into the year-to-date numbers on the following page. Fare and pass totals, again, for the month of August, were very good based on how we see the rest of the year. So we see fare and pass totals down about $12 million on a year-to-date basis. Again, reduced fare subsidy coming in about half of what we expected. Non-fare box revenues continue to strongly outperform. Over $6 million of positive budget variance on that line alone. And overall, total revenues are down about 15 on a year-to-date basis. So we'll see, again, on the subsequent pages, how we continue to have strong expense controls more than offsetting the drags that we saw here on a monthly and year-to-date basis.
Say, Jeremy,
Yes.
before you go to the next page, I just wanted to highlight something for the board, because I recall for a number of years we kept paying attention to it, and it finally seems to be going in the right direction, and that is free rides.
Yes.
I recall, for years and years, but I also wanted to I think the security department. I think a lot of this absolutely is a result of the work and the effort they put in, and now you're beginning to see the fruits of it. And
Absolutely.
as I was just going through it, I remember year after year we kept wondering, well, all of these free rides, and I saw that number of 1.8 less than 2016. Again, this started almost 2 to 3 years ago with the security department working on this issue, so you can absolutely see the positive trend. So
Yes.
I just wanted to acknowledge them and say that's a great job to have this going in the right direction.
Very much so. On the expense side of the house, we continue to see continued improvement on clamping down on expenses. For the first half of the year, we did a good job of controlling the expenses across the different lines outlined here. As we talked about last month, after the implementation of the state budget and the cuts that were embedded therein, we again looked to ratchet down those expense controls so that we would see additional savings. We started seeing some of those savings materialize in July. We see more of those savings materializing here in August because, again, that budget was signed into place in July, so now that we've had a full month, we've been able to further implement additional controls. We keep a very keen eye on overtime and on labor in general, but that line is continuing to see favorability to the tune of about $2.5 million for the month. Material continues to come in as expected. Fuel and power continue to outperform. Provisions for injuries and damages, some favorability there. And then the security services, as the chairman mentioned, we see a slight uptick in expenses there because of the continued efforts to crack down on scofflaws and things like that. And then other expenses continue to see strong performance. This is, again, primarily our contractual line, and we see over $3 million of favorability there. So overall, we see about $7 million, $6.9 million of favorability for the month of August. That more than offsets the shortfall that we saw on the revenue side of about $400,000. So net, we're up for the month of August by about $6.5 million. So again, we've seen steady improvement throughout the year on a monthly basis, and you see how that is aggregated up in the year-to-date expense slide on the next page. You see here again, similar trajectory on all of the lines, labor, material, fuel, and power, seeing strong outperformance and favorability. Provisions for injuries and damages, security services, again, see strong favorability. And then again, that other expense line coming in almost $13.5 million of favorability there is been the bread and butter of the expense controls. So overall, we're seeing total expense favorability of about $26.3 million on a year-to-date basis. Again, the shortfalls that we saw on the revenue side were about 15. So we see over $11 million, $11.3 million of favorability on a year-to-date basis. And again, about half of that came from August alone. So again, those expense controls that we talked about last month continue to be implemented, and again, we will continue to do that throughout the rest of the year to help offset some of the drag that we're seeing because of the state budget cuts.
Jeremy, have you had an opportunity to take a look at September numbers?
We're just starting to get those in, so it's a little too early to tell. But again, we feel confident that the expense controls that we've talked about over the last several months will continue to be able to enact those. So again, knock on wood, we continue to see steady, expense controls and thereby steady favorability in our monthly budgets.
But I kind of feel like, we're facing two headwinds.
Mm-hmm.
The first headwind we were dealing with was the fact that lower gas prices, Uber and Lyft. And then all of a sudden, as you said, at the end of July, we get hit with a second headwind.
Mm-hmm.
When you take a look at what happened at the state, 2% cut off the top in terms of sales tax, and then the other reduction. So, and then,
Yes.
With 6 months to try to address it. I mean, the first headwind we were talking about, okay, can we, put in efficiencies that will get us through the fiscal year with the first headwind, and then we get another headwind with 6 months to address it. I mean, the staff, you guys have been doing a great job managing expenses, but like I said, I just feel like now we're facing two headwinds versus before it was Lyft, Uber, low gas prices and all of that, and now, having to deal with the state budget as well, because the state budget is not just a one-year impact to us. The state budget, in terms of the cuts that we received, is ongoing.
Yes, particularly in terms of the sales tax, the 2% haircut for the administrative fee that was implemented by the state will definitely be an ongoing charge. We'll see the continued impact of the PTF cut for 2018 as well. And then the reduced fare reimbursement has been cut since 2015, which was again embedded in the state's budget. So yes, there are some definite headwinds. We'll be continuing to work through the headwinds that we're seeing here for 2017, and then as we start the discussion with regard to in the future months here with regard to the 2018 budget, again, we will be addressing those headwinds because, again, as you've indicated in prior months as well, some of these issues are not going to abate in the short term. So we are going to definitely have to start looking at, and we're developing those plans now, but we'll start walking through those in the coming months as we develop those.
In terms of the real estate transfer tax, have we seen any uptick in terms of how is that going this year?
So it's coming in about where we expected it to. There's some notable buildings in the loop that are for sale or have recently closed. Those are all good news factors. On the downside, just the retail market was a little less robust in general. The residential market was a little less robust than what was expected. So while we're seeing some good news and you see headlines with regard to some of the big buildings downtown, it's kind of netting out against some of the other softness in the residential market.
Jeremy, what component in the labor that is fueling our positive side is driving that in a positive way, and do you foresee that trend continuing? Because it looks like that's a component we can control from a labor standpoint. Do you see that trending continually throughout the year, or what's the driver in that?
So we primarily are looking at overtime and wanting to make sure that we have a tight control mechanism on that. We've had great assistance from the operations folks and from the infrastructure folks and the other large departments here at CTA. Again, looking at how we can make sure that we are trending in a favorable manner on that line, because as you indicate, that's something that we can definitely control. Risk factors, or is what the chairman has highlighted in the past, is weather. Obviously can have a negative impact on our overall expense structure in general. But again, I think that we've gotten great assistance from our various departments on making sure that we continue to see that trend develop from a monthly basis.
Let me amplify what Jeremy just said a little bit more. I think that from a labor cost perspective, we've done a remarkable job in managing our labor costs. The other big unknown that's out there right now is our collective bargaining negotiations, which are still underway and which will have some impact on our budget at some point in time when those come to a close. But I think that in terms of managing those expenses that we have control over, I think Jeremy and his team, along with the rest of the departments, have done a really good job of controlling that, which has really been the good news that has come out of a budget that has seen the revenue side underperform beyond what we had contemplated. But the issue is, how long can I continue to hope to manage that in an environment where my subsidies are decreasing and where unexpected events like weather and other things can have an impact on that. So we're managing smartly, we're doing the right things, we're controlling costs, we're controlling overtime, where discretionary expenses are being managed very tightly in terms of what we allow and don't allow. But that can only be a portion of the equation. And we're going to continue to do that, because I know it's important that we show that we're being good stewards of the public dollars as it relates to managing our overall budget during these times.
And then with regard to the three commodities that we purchase, fuel, power, and natural gas, as we highlighted in the prior pages, we see positive variability there on a monthly and annual basis. Again, we've locked in most of what we need for not only this year, but in the coming years as well. We do see a slight decrease in fuel costs. Again, for 17, we're basically locked in. But again, we look at where we need to buy additional purchases for 18 and beyond. After the hurricanes, we have seen a slight decrease in fuel prices, not down to the levels that we saw prior to the hurricanes, but again, we're seeing a trajectory back to the norm, which is what we kind of expected.
Jeremy, question. I noticed with power and natural gas, especially with power, you already have locked in 100% of in 2019.
Yes.
What's the advantages of locking in power natural gas into 2019 versus fuel? I mean, is it less fluctuation? What's the difference?
The fuel market actually acts a little differently. They don't go out as far just due to just the market and kind of standards within the market that have been set for long operating norms. So the opportunity to go out longer than basically 2 years is not really there in that market as it is in the electricity and natural gas markets.
Okay.
Any more questions for Jeremy? Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing payment of up to $4.5 million for stipends to encourage proposals for the Red and Purple Modernization Project Phase 1 Design Build Procurement. Chris Bushell.
Chris Bushell, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. The $2.3 billion Red and Purple Modernization Project will be the largest single construction contract in CTA's history. And the staff has already started the first step of an anticipated two-step procurement through the publication of an RFQ. That RFQ will subsequently be followed by an RFP anticipated to be released late in 2017 and awarded late in the following year. Industry custom and practice for design-build megaprojects call for the payment of stipends to unsuccessful proposers who are pre-qualified and submit compliant proposals. In addition to signaling to the market the CTA is serious about moving the project forward, stipends also encourage proposers to expend time, money, and resources to provide more creative and ultimately innovative solutions in their proposals. An additional benefit is that when we pay a stipend, any of the ideas from the unsuccessful proposers become the intellectual property of the CTA, and we can use those in value engineering efforts with the winning proposer. In addition, or further, federal guidance supports the payment of stipends to unsuccessful proposers because such stipends strongly encourage the very best companies to put forth their very best proposals. This is consistent with what the information we've heard back from the contractors themselves. So we did an extensive request for industry comment. We purposely looked to international firms as well as local firms that had extensive experience in projects of this size and complexity. The RFIC responses, the request for industry comment responses, encourage CTA to consider providing such a stipend to shortlisted proposers. CTA staff recommends that the stipend for this contract be set to individual successful proposers at $1.5 million. The RFQ contemplates a short list of up to 4 proposers. Therefore, the aggregate total expenditure would be $4.5 million as defined in the ordinance. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Jeremy, any other cities we can point to where this has been tried before?
We've seen it successfully used in a number of transit projects. The Maryland Light Rail would be one. The New York City Metropolitan Transit Authority has used it on a similar project of similar scale, commuter railroad, but a similar circumstance for the Long Island Railroad. We've also seen it in transportation projects. We looked at a project down in Florida, the I-4, and we saw a similar situation. The industry has generally responded really well, and it's been considered to be a payment that has a significant amount of value, especially when considered in the context of a $2.3 billion project.
With regards to the responses that, whoever will come back to us with, do you have an estimate of how much they end up spending in their responses?
Looking at other projects of similar size and complexity, I would say that the cost to advance the design work necessary to be competitive here, so they'll take the bridging documents that we put forward in the RFP, and they'll advance those technically with their own logistics staff as well as with engineering staff that'll be a key part of their team. I think that in the neighborhood of $10 million, maybe $8 to $10 million would be a reasonable total expense for a proposal of this type and complexity.
So the $1.5 million doesn't make them whole, it just provides some
It's a good faith payment, and again, it shows our seriousness, and it allows us to own the ideas that are submitted by the unsuccessful proposers, so we can use those to the advantage of the project and our customers.
Thank you.
That's what I like.
Any other questions for Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, thank you, Chris.
Yep.
thanks.
If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Our final order of business today is the review of 11 purchase and sales award recommendations, and the presenter is Ellen McCormick and Tom McCone.
Good morning, Ellen McCormick, Vice President of Purchasing.
So we'll start with contract numbers A1 through A4. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question on A1. It seems as though this is probably more of a maintenance issue for a $2.5 million contract, and it's only, there's no DBE goal, there's 0%, and 7% of the participation commitment is 7. Was there, I find it hard to believe that there was no DBE that can shovel snow and haul snow away.
Yeah, so this is a contract that we've looked at, and we have similar ones like it, where we've set a goal in the past, and we've had trouble from both the DBE and the contractor meeting the goal because of the as-needed nature of the services. So what we get is DBEs would staff, they'd see the total value of the contract, they'd staff up to try and meet it or ramp up on their equipment, and then we wouldn't get the snowfall. And so then they'd be out of pocket and having committed to this and then not see that sort of work come through. So in the past, we've had a contract that might have had a goal, and then the attainment is just not there, and then the DBE comes and says, hey, listen, I've bought all this equipment, and we weren't utilized. And if you look at the contract utilization on the prior contract, you'll see that. It's a large contract because it's as needed. We just didn't utilize it. So we said, we didn't set a goal on this. The contractor came back and actually proposed a DBE, so they found a way to put a DBE in it, which I think was great, and we're going to keep an eye on it to make sure that they can actually hit that attainment as well.
If I could just follow up, and this is a recommendation, I think we need to refresh our DBE mailing list. Like Andre, you're talking about a truck with a snowplow out in front of it, moving snow, for the most part on our properties. And to have sent out 31 solicitations and only get 2 back, one, we could save money on postage if we were to refresh. I just think we probably, and I don't know the last time we've ended up doing this, Ellen, but as I kind of look at, how many we've got DBEs and the number of responses, we probably need to, every 2 years, refresh these. People, I don't know if they leave, go out of business or whatever, but to say we've got 31 and only 2 responded, and again, the company has got it, and even if you take a look, again, I've been out to Wheeling, I've been out to Lake Bella, used to read meters out there in the 90s, so I know these communities. But again, you're talking about a truck with a snowplow, moving snow off our properties. And as Andre mentioned, that doesn't seem very complicated, that we only got 2 bids, and that we didn't get any Chicago. Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, All Cleaners, Inc. might be a Chicago company.
So, Chairman, we currently are going through, actually, my staff just finished going through, because we send them email blasts, and email accounts do change. They get a new email or whatever. So we've sent it out, and we've asked, and if they bounce back to us, then we send them a mailing, and we ask them, let us know what your new email address is. So that is something that we do to make sure that we're getting it to the right people. In addition, because this has been, we've seen it as an issue when I've come up here, the number of bids that we're getting. So we have been advertising in the Sun-Times. We currently have an agreement also with the Tribune. So from now until the end of the year, we're going to see if advertising there helps us at all. In addition, we're looking to advertise in maybe trade magazines. We're reaching out to other transit agencies. Where do you advertise? We're reaching out to the city of Chicago. Where do they advertise, to see if we can do something like that? The issue with the trade magazines is they don't come out, they come out periodically and maybe don't fit our procurement schedule. But what we thought we could do is put in a copy of the contracts that we have coming forth. right? So in the next 6 months, the CTA will be going out for these contracts. You know, please become a registered vendor with us, and then we would
What
send them
about
an
some of
email.
the associations? Like, you know, the Hispanic, 'cause I see, you've got just a number of associations with a number of businesses. What about trying to work with them in their membership? Because again, you know, some folks might see the Sun-Times, might not, Tribune, might not. Emails, as you say, they change all the time. And how often does a DBE have to be recertified?
Annually.
So they have to come in and be recertified.
So, and one thing we've been doing, because we did notice this, actually not on this contract, but on another contract, is we've been actually calling the assist agencies, like a HACIA or the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to make sure they're getting all of our communications, right? It's not going to their spam mail or somewhere else. Just say, hey, listen, there's good opportunities coming, and we want to make sure that you're getting this out to your members as well. So we've been reaching out directly to the assist agencies to make sure that they're getting our communications and understand that these are specific opportunities for their members.
You might want to call too, I just think of a sister agency, Park District. I would really reach out to Mike Kelly, because if you drive around the city all the time, Park District, whether it's Soldier Field, some of the bigger parks, you see a lot of companies moving snow. So that would be an agency that I would touch base with too, and just see, you know, who Mike is using. I know with city departments they're using, I know they've got the garbage trucks, they
Right.
retrofit those with plows out in front. But Mike, at least I've driven around the city and I've
Sure.
seen the Park District using a lot of different companies. So you might want to give Mike a call too.
We'll definitely reach out to him today. And then going with what you were saying about the assist agencies, maybe we can send them also a copy of our buying plan.
Yeah,
So they
just
could
give them a
share it
call.
with their, it
Yeah.
is available on the city's website and on ours, but we'll actually give it to them. We did reach out to some of the other companies because we too were surprised that we got two.
Yeah.
And the reason that they said it is because they never know, they're on demand, they're on call. So they'll go, and when we need them, we need a lot of people. So they have to have all these people available, but they never know if they're gonna get a call or not. Because even if we get some snow, we handle what we can handle on our own, and we go to them as a secondary. So it kind of takes a major snowfall, but they have to have all these people. When we call them, they have to have all these people. So that's why, because we did look, and we looked to see how many we've gotten in the past, and it's been limited, and it's been limited for that reason, is what they're telling us. But we will work with, we'll reach out to the Park District, and we will send our buying plans to the associations. And as I said, we are trying to come up with more creative ways to get the word out about CTA procurements, because we do want to increase the number of people we have bidding on our procurements.
Yeah, I just, like I said, refreshing our DBE list.
And we'll make sure that is done.
Okay, all right.
Any more questions on A1 through A4? Next will be contract numbers B1 through B4. Any questions? Okay, next will be contract number F1. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got, well, you said F1. not
Yeah, F1, computer aid. Okay, then contract, next will be contract number H1. Oh, actually, yeah,
No,
G1,
we
sorry.
got G1.
Yeah, G1,
Yeah,
clever devices.
you know, I have never been a big supporter of sole source contracts, especially 28 million. And I'm just curious, you know, I consider these, when you get into these, they're like annuities. You just keep on. So I'm just curious, I know that, you know, they're going to be helping us with software on over 1,900 of our buses, but is this going to be this contract runs, well, the contract is up now, this new contract will run until, so
Yeah, I
it's
believe
3
it's
years,
3.
2020?
Right,
3 years.
yes.
So what happens after 2020? Do they get another annuity? Does the annuity continue?
Good morning, Veronica Lanise, Chief of Strategy, Data and Technology. Accompanying me is our Vice President of Technology, Jeff Branicki. So just to give a little bit of history on Clever Devices, is we've been working with them for the past 15 years. That was a competitive procurement when we first made the decision of which path to go. Currently, there is no single vendor that does all the integration with all of our systems on the buses. So that's kind of the challenge currently, is that, we have a lot of different systems on our buses, some that are customer-facing and some that are back-end that allow us to get information about the buses, monitor where they're at, communicate with the operators in a two-way format, and a series of other things. So one of the reasons why this is a sole source is that, one, there's some proprietary software associated with some of these systems that when we made the decision to go with Clever, we had to buy those licenses, and they are proprietary. And then the other piece, as I mentioned before, is the integration, because there's a lot of different pieces that only Clever can use. So that's why this is a sole source.
But how long will we be locked into it, I guess is my question. So 2020, this is a 3-year contract?
So every time we do a sole source, we actually look at the marketplace
Yeah.
to see what's going on, and if there's other vendors or other products that are out there that we don't currently have, we look to see, does it make sense to go out to the marketplace? And so, we went through that process during this sole source procurement process, and we didn't find that there was a viable alternative to what we currently do. But we will definitely relook at this when this contract is coming up for expiration.
Yeah, I would just say before 2020, when this contract is up, you should just be able to share with the board what the market, you looked at other similar entities, and here's the pricing. I just don't know, again, I understand, and we're gonna move it, but I'm just saying 28 million, and you're saying, Terry, we could do it in 2020, then we could do it again in 2023, we could do it again in 2026. And I'm like, well, okay, technology is constantly changing, you've got all of these companies, and I got, fine, we're gonna do it for the next 3 years, but on and on and on. Getting locked into something like that, 28 million, that's not a small.
Yeah, the other thing we need to be mindful of as, we move forward is we have to have enough capital dollars if we're going to switch our systems. There's a substantial initial cost to installing new equipment. So that's one of the things we also take into consideration when we decide, well, what path are we following? And so that's part of the process that we followed for this particular one.
Yeah, but you're just doing an ROI on, it might take an initial upfront capital investment, but it pays off in the long term because you save money on contracts like this. So,
I think what would be helpful to us in the future is when we're getting into something that's going to be, especially since you're the experts in this particular area, that's going to have a long-term impact in a number of different areas, if we can maybe get an explanation, because once we get locked into certain software, then it may require certain hardware, certain training, et cetera. So kind of a big picture when we're going into something for us as a board would be helpful, because then that would alleviate some of the questions as we're having to come back, because I understand with this particular software, if we change it, it would have a lot of impact. But I think if we get that up front, and you might have done that, I wasn't here necessarily, but that would be very, very helpful, because then we know we're going to be locked in for a long time on this, and we can make that decision up front.
We will definitely do that.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, I think.
If I can just add to that, I actually, I may be the only person in the room here who actually was here when the first contract was actually put into place. And at the time, there were I believe maybe 2 companies in the entire country that did this type of technology. And part of the challenge with this particular type of technology is that it's not just the question of buying the hardware and the software, it's the fact that it gets integrated into every bus procurement that you engage in going forward. And so when we made the commitment to go with Clever Devices, which started off as really a fairly simple application, which had to do with just being able to make announcements on the buses themselves. The technology has now expanded greatly beyond that in terms of both the data that we get and the way in which that data gets used. But more importantly, every bus purchase that you make, as part of that, buried in that bus procurement, is also the purchase of the equipment and the software that basically goes into every bus that ultimately supports it. And so the transition out of this, as you're rightfully mentioning, is a much bigger conversation than just this one contract. It actually permeates through a whole bunch of contracts that we award on a regular basis in which this contract feeds into it. And I think in making a determination about transitioning out, I agree completely with what you're saying. There's a return on the investment, and it's an investment that involves not only changing out the hardware, the software, but also the impact it has on our entire bus fleet in terms of retrofitting as well as going forward. So you almost have to plan for this years in advance in conjunction with other purchases that you're doing that can allow you to transition into something like this.
And the reason I mentioned it, I know we're getting new buses and all of that. We've been trying to, I think we're going to have one of the newest fleets probably in the country with buses and rails. And I was just thinking, as we get new buses, as we get new rail cars, as they are way again to be a little bit more efficient, where, again, I think what you said is letting us know up front, guess what, we're buying this. But you also need to know that the software and everything's embedded. It's going to be there for the next 10 to 20 years. Because the life expectancy of a bus is about 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, about 12 years.
So you kind of know you're locked in. Okay, well, when that bus is up at the end of 15 years, sometimes we retrofit the buses and use them. But I think knowing on the front end, when I see this and I'm thinking, okay, I have to do it again in 3 years, again in 3 years.
The other thing that we think about in having this conversation is what sort of customer enhancements am I trying to create around the use of our buses, and this software and the data that it generates isn't just sort of a behind the scenes use for CTA. It's also the customer facing portion of what you see on your bus. And as we're discussing new features that we want to include and new ways in which we want to interface with our customers and provide them with more information, this all integrates into this same database that ultimately supports that whole process. So the conversation about what we're doing and when we do it is further complicated by the customer-facing piece of it that we're also trying to improve. Part of what this contract is doing is actually providing us enhancements that will allow us to improve some of the customer-facing features that not only impact the new buses we're going to buy, but our existing fleet as well. And so, it is a complicated balancing act in terms of how to basically manage. We don't buy buses anymore. We buy computers on wheels. And figuring out how to basically manage that as an IT issue, separate from as a mechanical, rolling stock issue, is becoming more and more of a challenge for us. But I think that you're absolutely right that as a board, we need to make sure that we're putting in front of you the right set of information so you understand not just that you're buying a bus, but you're also committing to IT and networking and other software infrastructure that supports that bus, that basically is a long-term investment. It is not something that just goes away when the bus goes away. Right. You're absolutely right.
I got a question. Do we know by any chance, because they're, out-of-town companies, do they have their local staff here to provide the maintenance and things of that issue while we're here in Chicago? I know they're based in New York and their DB is in Texas. Do they have local representation here for the maintenance of the equipment?
So they do have technicians at all of our bus garages, and while their DB is not local, they have made a commitment to make sure that those individuals who come through those vendors are local.
Okay. If there's no more questions, next will be contract number H1. Any questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 11 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Thank you. Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
Would the secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
That motion passed with 5 yes votes.
Thank you. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.
A few minutes off yet, Terry. Would everybody please be seated? We're about to begin, and please silence your cell phones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of Chicago Transit Board for October 11, 2017. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Miller? Here. Mr. Irvine?
Here.
Ms. Rosales?
Here.
Mr. Youngblood?
Here.
Mr. Silva will not be here today. Chairman Peterson?
Here.
We have 5 members of the board present. We have a quorum.
Thanks, Greg. The first order of business today is public comment. Greg, it's
We have none, sir. Neither one came.
No one? Okay, all right. That's great. Before we move on, then I'd like to turn it over to the president, President Carter.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson. As many of you know, I have worked at CTA in one capacity or another for about 19 years. In fact, over the course of my 33 years in the workplace, I've only worked for 3 organizations. Here at CTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Working in transportation, whether in Chicago or in Washington, D.C., has been my life's work, and I cannot imagine a more fulfilling and rewarding professional endeavor than helping this city and this country literally move people forward every day to get to jobs, communities, healthcare, school, and the things that make their daily lives work. But I will admit, CTA is a special place. Since my first day at CTA in 1984, I've heard employees talk, sometimes even brag, about the time that they spent with what they simply refer to as the company. Within our CTA family of employees, there is a very special pride among our ranks in those who stay with the company for decades. And why shouldn't they be proud? These are the people who become the cornerstones of their departments. They develop a wealth of knowledge that allows them to not only do their jobs, but frequently serve as mentors. They have strong work records, and they have allowed them to earn the trust of their supervisors and frequently earn promotions. Make no mistake, their dedication to CTA is second to none. Today, we will honor the top 10 longest tenured employees working at CTA, as well as the longest tenured bus and rail operators. These are the brightest of our shining stars, representing the entire workforce, what commitment to the company really looks like. To all of our honorees, as I call your names, I ask that you please stand. You don't have to remain standing, but please allow us to recognize you when your name is called. I ask that everyone withhold their applause until we have recognized the full list. And I should note that for many of these individuals, there are members of the CTA family who have attended this meeting just to be a part of this special recognition. On the bus side, we have Harry Rodriguez from the Kedzie Garage. Mr. Rodriguez has driven for CTA for 39 years and 11 months. On the rail side, we are recognizing Kelvin Jackson, who's been with us for 34 years and 9 months, and Ms. Cleo Lofton, who has been with us for 32 years and 1 month. Mr. Jackson operates our trains along the red line, while Ms. Lofton operates along the green line. Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Jackson, and Ms. Lofton, we are grateful for your service and encourage you to continue to be an example of inspiration for our entire rail and bus operation workforce. Thank you. And now it is my great pleasure to count down the 10 longest-serving employees currently working at CTA. At number 9 and 10, we have a tie. Both Susan Filson, a customer service representative out of Harlem Terminal, and Nancy Guadagno, a grant accountant who works right here at headquarters, have been with the CTA for 43 years and 6 months. Next is Alan Baston, a mechanic in South Shops Heavy Maintenance Facility who has been with us for 45 years and 1 month. Next is Fulton Neely. He's unable to join us today, but he is a car repairer at the Des Plaines terminal, and he has been with us for 46 years and 11 months. Next is Brother Henderson, a cash box puller from the Chicago Avenue garage, who has been with us for 47 years and 4 months. Following him is Robert K. Sr., a bus servicer from Forest Glen Garage, who has been with us for 48 years. Unfortunately, he's not able to be with us today. And then we have Manuel Galvin, who also could not be here today, but is a bus...
He's here.
Oh, you are here. I'm sorry. Thank you, Manuel. Stand up. You are a bus servicer from Forest Glen Garage, and you've been with us for 49 years and 5 months. Congratulations. So as you can probably tell, Forest Glen must be doing something right because they certainly lead the pack in terms of long-term employees. Our next top 3 longest tenured employees are as follows. At number 3, we have Paul Jankowski. Mr. Jankowski is a signal maintainer out of West Shops Powering Way and has been with CTA for 50 years and 7 months. Our second longest tenured employee is James Fiorito. Mr. Fiorito was a senior manager in capital improvement plan control who has served for 50 years and 11 months before his well-earned retirement just last week. And finally, it is my greatest pleasure to acknowledge CTA's current longest tenured employee, Mr. William Medema. Mr. Medema is a bus maintenance office clerk at the Forest Glen Garage. He joined CTA in 1961 and has served CTA for 56 years and 3 months. To our honorees, your long tenure speaks volumes about what it is to commit yourself to an organization. It also reminds me that even with my 19 to 20-something years worth of service, I have a long ways to go. On behalf of Chairman Peterson, our board, and the entire CTA family, thank you for your service. You've been a shining example of the dedication to CTA, and we thank you once again for participating in this event. Now we'd like for you to come up so we can take a commemorative picture with you and the rest of the board. So one of the things you need to know is that this man was here. Basically,
17. Congratulations.
So yeah, kind of.
Marbell, get it, get in there.
Right in the middle will be fine. All right, everybody. Here we go. Big smiles, big smiles. And bigger smiles even. There we go. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
If you get a chance, I got to send you my camera. It's a different thing. And I want to take a picture of it. I want to text it to her to see that she knows.
We've never met.
It's a great event. Excuse me, we're about to start the meeting again, so I ask everybody to please be seated.
All right, we're gonna move on with the meeting. If everyone could take their seats.
Terry, that makes us feel young, doesn't it?
Oh my God.
I feel young. It's like first time forever, man.
Oh my goodness. I think that gentleman 52 or 53 years, same job. Oh my
That
God.
was great. That's right. Never again, man.
I'm not gonna work that long, though. It's a long time to work.
Will you please shut the door, please? Thank you.
Our next order of business today is the approval of the board minutes of September 13, 2017, regular board meeting. The meetings were previously distributed. Any comments? If no comments, I would now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 13, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. We'll now take up executive session matters. It is my understanding that there will be executive session this morning, Karen.
Yes, Chairman, we will have a short executive session pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. May I now have a motion to recess into executive session for the reasons so stated by council?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes. Would everybody please be seated and close the door? We're about to begin.
Really great.
Yes, sir.
I will now entertain a motion to return to open session. May the secretary call the roll.
Yes, and it was seconded by somebody?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Irvine. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. I'd now like to address the first three executive agenda items, board items number 4A, 4B, and 4C. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 4A is staff's recommendation for an ordinance that authorizes the acquisition of a permanent air rights easement over property that's located at 3324 North Clark Street in Chicago for the Red and Purple Modernization Project. This is parcel 6. Staff is recommending the purchase of these rights for $172,000. The parcel is owned by 3324 North Clark LLC. Agenda item 4B is a recommendation for the acquisition of a permanent air rights easement over property located at 4328 North Kenmore Avenue in Chicago, also for the Red and Purple Modernization Project. This is parcel 24. Staff is recommending a purchase price of $86,000 to sellers Alfredo and Juana Martinez. Agenda item 4C is a recommendation to acquire a permanent air rights easement over property located at 3411 to 3415 North Seminary Avenue in Chicago for the Red and Purple Modernization Project, also known as parcel 27, and staff is recommending a purchase price of $60,000 payable to Southport Properties LLC.
All right, thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to approve 3 ordinances. Board item number 4A, 4B, and 4C, authorizing the acquisition of permanent air right easements over properties located at 3324 North Clark Street, 4328 North Kenmore Avenue, and 3411 to 15 North Seminary Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, for the Red and Purple Modernization Project.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is agenda item number 4D and 4E, both executive session items. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 4D is a recommendation of staff to acquire property located at 3406 North Sheffield Avenue in Chicago for the Red and Purple Modernization Project. This is parcel 12. Staff is recommending an amount of $2,832,500 for a partial taking, with an option of a full taking if the seller doesn't do certain demolition of $4,032,500 payable to 3406 North Sheffield LLC.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain
And I forgot, well, item 4E is the next one, which is an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of property located at 3328 North Clark Street for the Red and Purple Modernization Project known as Parcel 8. Staff is recommending that the purchase of this property to Buck Miller LLC for $1,325,000 plus cost of up to $204,900 for utility relocation.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to approve 2 ordinances. Board item number 4D and 4E, authorizing the acquisition of properties located at 3406 North Sheffield and 3328 North Clark Street.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Irvine.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson. The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning. The committee approved the September 13th committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed the following ordinance: an ordinance authorizing payment of up to $4.5 million for stipends to encourage proposals for the Red and Purple Modernization Project Phase 1 Design Build Procurement. The committee also approved all 11 purchase and sales award recommendations that were on the committee agenda. The committee placed the ordinance and contracts on the omnibus and recommended board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chairman Peterson.
Thanks, Director Irvine. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Irvine?
So moved.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Ms. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
The motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a construction report. Chris?
Chris Bouchel, your Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Tom McCone, Chief Administrative Officer.
So this month, I'd like to point out that we have a new project here at the end, the East Lake, Milwaukee, and Illinois substation upgrade. This is an important project. Both the East Lake and Milwaukee are part of our ongoing and sustained investments in the Blue Line, part of the Your New Blue program. And you will also remember an earlier board action regarding the purchase of East Lake being an important substation that provides traction power to all but one of our lines and located in the downtown area. So for the 95th Terminal Improvement Program, the project continues to progress. We're seeing a lot of work being done on the South Terminal. Those of you that drive by there will notice that the building is starting to take shape. We're starting to see all sorts of structural elements that are in place. This is not only an important building for us in terms of customer service, but also as an entryway into the city of Chicago. The sort of size and statement that this building will make is one of the more important things we've done in terms of a gateway into the city. You can see key elements reaching completion. The south bus bridge, various finished concrete elements are being poured. As well, the structure itself continues to advance. Importantly, you've seen a lot of pictures in this project of sort of deep infrastructure improvements. You're really starting to see one of the most important ones taking shape out here. We're at the point now where this is complete. This slide was actually taken 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the improvements down here in this interlocking are a key piece of this station and a key component of its cost. These replacements of the interlockings in this area will allow greater flexibility to provide service out of this key terminal. And so beyond having a really effective terminal for our customers, we're also going to have the ability to provide better service through an improved interlocking that's located to the south of the South Terminal. The Wilson Transfer Station is continuing to completion. Project is both on budget and on schedule. These pictures look like finished pictures. We're not quite there yet, but the terminal is certainly looking great. You can start to see the scope and magnitude of a modern CTA station that's really emerging as part of the mayor, Dorval, and the board's vision for transit, really in the footprint of the larger Red Purple Modernization project to come to the north. Again, you can see the scope and magnitude of the platforms and the kind of service that this will enable us to provide to the community and our customers. The new terminal, you'll remember that we're currently working to open this terminal fully. We're currently using the terminal, but just the west platform. We're working to complete the east platform as well as the vertical circulation for it. But the west platform fully in use. This particular station, probably 85% in use at this point. As you can witness from the photographs, beautiful station, a real advance of many concepts that you've seen and heard about and experienced over the years. Ravenswood Loop continues. We are still in the phase of kind of the deep infrastructure improvements. You've seen pictures of cabling being run. You've seen photographs of structural steel. So that continues. We are reaching the completion phase of some of these elements where the structure is being done and getting ready for the placement of the relay houses, and then ultimately the programming and commissioning of this work, which will allow us to run service smoothly and safely, and safety improvements rather, in this important stretch of the Brown Line that connects the corridor north of Armitage with the downtown loop area. Again, pictures of the structure. IMD, an important project right in the footprint of the downtown area. We are most importantly adding accessibility, but also important renovations to this project. It also is advancing. I know you guys, Director Irvine, I was happy to see micropiles checked off of your bucket list. This is just a caisson, so you've seen a lot of these, but it gives you an idea of some of the challenges associated with putting elevators into these stations. So you can see that we're obviously not running trains on the line where that caisson machine is parked. We're taking a lot of care to make sure that that machine does not damage the existing tracks. So service is running on the other side of it in a single track. Also something we had to coordinate very closely with our customers and with operations. But putting these deep foundations in is a critical part of adding accessibility, because in almost every case we have to do some sort of deep foundation for the elevators that are added, and the locations are just tricky to say the least. This piece of equipment didn't just drive down the highway and park on the right-of-way, so even getting it there, you can imagine the types of cranes and other equipment and lane closures that accompanied that. The Quincy Loop Station upgrade continues. We have had some challenges here. You've seen a lot of pictures with the below grade. This is in an older part of the downtown area. We have had a number of unanticipated conflicts. So we are still managing the budget aggressively. The challenges really are with putting in the various foundations. This is not caissons. These are the micropiles and the micropile machines. So this is the elevator. The micropiles, I think there are 6 of them. You can count them underneath this elevator. We're pouring the slab on top of that, and they'll subsequently build the elevator on top of that. So project is advancing, though. As I just talked about, Eastlake, Milwaukee, and Illinois. Eastlake and Milwaukee are part of the Your New Blue program. All of those are providing upgrades to our existing traction power system to enable us to continue to grow and provide service on this vital line. I think we all know at this point that CTA runs an electric railroad, and the importance of traction power to providing the growing service, particularly in certain parts of the Blue Line. Big part of this project is not just to replace obsolete equipment and to increase capacity, it's also to make sure the buildings that house this critical equipment are in good shape. So you will see a few months of tuck pointing photographs. I apologize in advance. But we are working with the contractor to take advantage of the weather and move this critical work forward. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris?
First two, 18, January and April, are we looking good for the completion dates?
I'm sorry, for which project?
The first two, 95th and
Yeah, I can brief you on 95th. We're looking at, yes, for the south terminal, we're looking at the first quarter of 18. For the north terminal, the end of the year, end of 18. Yeah.
Any other questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. Greg, any new business to come before the board?
No, sir.
With no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.